Democrats really don't like President Trump's pick for national intelligence for some reason. Election fraud probes have officially been launched after the fiasco in California last week, and the White House says a deal with Iran is very real this time. It's Friday, June 12th, and this is news and commentary from America's Heartland. You're watching Heartlander News. Welcome into Heartlander News. I'm Chris Stigall. I don't know if you've been following the Act Blue CEO testimony or lack thereof in the last week. Jim Jordan sounded off on it.
Act Blue itself says they have 23,000 candidates in groups that use their site last year alone. And through that site, they raised almost $1.8 billion from 52 million contributors. And you allege, and others, that some of those contributions came from overseas. Now, lay it out. Prove it.
Well, yeah, it's not just Republicans who allege that. We've always suspected that. It's their board chairman who said up to $38 million looks like it came from foreign origin. So their board chairman said there's problems. All of their fraud prevention team either resigned, left because they were retaliated against, or were fired. We deposed all 5 of them. They all took the fifth. And maybe most importantly, Ms. Wallace Jones, when she responded to Congress, we had sent her a letter asking her questions about how they handled fraud and how they were stopping foreign contributions. Her response, their outside legal counsel said, you misled Congress. You might want to correct the record. It looks like you knowingly, and these are key terms, Bill, knowingly and willingly misled the Congress, which you can't, that's a crime in and of itself. So with all that fact pattern, if I was Ms. Wallace Jones, I'd have taken the fifth too, for goodness sakes. Your whole team took the fifth. Your outside counsel says you should correct the record. You misled Congress and you didn't. And now you're in front of Congress. Of course she's going to take the fifth.
If they take the fifth, how do you get the truth?
Well, the Justice Department's digging into this. They'll get to the truth. I mean, this is going to, I think, potentially wind up in court. Who knows but the Justice Department's investigating as well. We need to do our work under the Constitution, do our oversight, because we may need to change campaign finance laws to deal with what's going on at Act Blue. As you pointed out, this is the fundraising machine for the billions of dollars.
Yeah, the mask has slipped completely off the Democrat Party's dirty money machine, Act Blue. And their CEO, as you just heard there, Regina Wallace Jones, she sits before Congress this past week, pleads the fifth more than 20 times. She wouldn't answer a single direct question about foreign cash flooding Democrat campaigns, the lies they told in Congress in 2023, the gutted fraud protections, or the blatant smurfing of millions in fake micro donations. This was a legally necessary and calculated stonewall, as Jim Jordan said, by the woman running the largest small dollar fundraising platform for the entire dirty Democrat machine. And she's not alone. Earlier depositions saw 5 different Act Blue insiders invoke the fifth, some 146 times, in fact. They all refuse to answer even basic questions about how illegal foreign money makes its way into our elections. And we really all ought to stop and consider that. Act Blue brags about powering some grandmother's $5 donation. But in reality, it's a sophisticated conduit. It's allegedly been looking the other way on foreign passports, foreign IP addresses, red flags that any honest operation would otherwise shut down right away. And internal warnings were ignored too. Compliance teams and lawyers walked right out the door. And all the while, billions poured in to elect Democrats up and down the ballot. This is not a bug in the system, of course. This is the Democrat system. Act Blue functions as a profoundly illegal arm of the Democrat Party. They operate in the shadows. They undermine fair elections. They launder influence. And honest Americans are forbidden from this same kind of behavior. Foreign billionaires and hostile actors don't get to buy our democracy with suitcase money broken into thousands of fake $5 clicks. That's not small dollar grassroots. That's election interference dressed up as activism. And pleading the fifth is not a constitutional shield here. It's a flashing confession of guilt. when the questions cut straight to the heart of corruption. Every American who believes in clean elections should be outraged. This isn't just fraud. It's an organized effort to kill democracy in darkness, where the rules apply to Republicans, but the cash flows freely for Democrats, no matter where it comes from. Chairman Jordan, Stigall, and Comer, they all have the receipts. Now it's time for consequences. Congress must refer this straight to the Department of Justice. There have to be indictments, there have to be prosecutions, there has to be asset seizures and freezes if necessary. Shut down the pipeline until it's cleaned up. We cannot and will not accept a two-tiered system where one party's criminal fundraising operation gets a free pass. The American people demand transparency and accountability and prison time for those who sold out our republic for power. Act Blue isn't too big to jail. No one should be too big to jail. And to that point, we turn to the DOJ launching multiple election fraud probes in California. The Justice Department defending its authority to ensure fair elections in California after it launched multiple election fraud investigations coupled with litigation over voter registration. This from the Daily Signal. California has long been known for liberal practices such as ballot harvesting with a universal mail-in voting system, allowing ballots to arrive a week after Election Day or more. No voter ID requirements, of course. The department's investigations into voter fraud in California are in line with the authority that they have, they say, the statutory authority to enforce our nation's election laws. The assistant U.S. attorney for the Central District of California posting on X days after the recent primary elections that they have launched fraud investigations and they would follow the evidence. Without commenting on any specific investigation, my office has multiple election fraud investigations underway. California takes a long time to count ballots, as you know, in most years, garnering significant attention, not to mention the outright and flagrant cheating, like paying homeless people. Hakeem Jeffries, El Jefe, as I like to call him, number 266, if you would here, please, Aaron. Hakeem Jeffries says that the homeless people who testified to a reporter that, yes, in fact, they took money, it's just a big right-wing conspiracy plot.
Earlier in the week, you told me that there is no election fraud happening in California and that anyone who questions the outcome of the election is a conspiracy theorist. However, there are now homeless people on Skid Row admitting they were bribed with cash, drugs, other incentives to vote Democrat in elections. Does that change your stance at all on whether or not these elections are rigged?
Listen, I'm unfamiliar with those reports, and I wouldn't be surprised if those are part of some far-right conspiracy theory being peddled on the internet to try to convince the American people that there's evidence of fraud in California.
So people speaking directly into a camera saying, yes, I was paid money to vote a certain way. People speaking directly into a camera, I was paid to vote a certain way. And he says it's part of a far-right conspiracy theory. Right. Even though we shared earlier in the week that statistically, the fact that all the late ballots that came in, 24,000 of them came in for this second place winner, this Rahman woman, and not a single one, not one vote came in for Spencer Pratt, which is a statistical impossibility, 1 in trillions, as was studied by the Washington Times. But sure, it's a right. I mean, it's gaslighting. You all understand this. We all understand it. And it's good. It's very, very good. The Department of Justice is looking into it. We'll get more into some work that the DOJ is doing soon. But I also want to turn to something pretty important this week, and that's the war in Iran, where just yesterday, President Trump says we have already reached a settlement, perhaps a real one. Now, Iran, as of this morning, is denying that, but the president says we're very, very close. After yesterday, he threatened to go all in. And he said, look, come to the table or we're going to bomb the hell out of you and we're going to seize Karg Island. And then he called it off yesterday and then announced we were really, really close to a deal. So this morning, Iran is saying that's not the case. But nevertheless, here's President Trump yesterday in discussing what is a potential final settlement.
Big day. I know you'll never be satisfied, but that's okay. That doesn't bother me at all. We just made a great settlement of the war with Iran, and we're going to be subject to finalization of documents, which should get done over the next few days. Probably have a signing maybe in Europe, and it's a great thing. Stock market's up 1,000 points. That means they like the deal. See, that means they like, the market goes down. That means they don't like the deal. But it's been up, oil's dropped. Oil will start coming down to, I think, even lower than it was before. I said I was in Iowa. It was $1.85 a gallon. Big day.
So, yeah, President Trump saying it's a good day. President Trump says we're very, very close. And listen, one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're analyzing Donald Trump is assuming that he negotiates like a typical politician, which of course he does not. He negotiates like a businessman. So most politicians start with the deal they want, and then they begin making concessions to get there. Trump, on the other hand, starts with leverage. And that's consistently what we've been watching play out with Iran. Leverage. Listen carefully to what he's saying. His demands have not changed even a little bit. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, period, full stop. Iran cannot keep enriched uranium that can eventually become a nuclear weapon, period, full stop. The Strait of Hormuz must remain open to international shipping, period, full stop. And by the way, our moderate Arab partners are already creating new ways around the Strait of Hormuz as we speak. Anyway, President Trump's conditions about this whole thing have been remarkably consistent. What's changing, of course, is the pressure, and that is where Donald Trump operates far differently than most modern leaders. You know, when negotiations stall, most politicians begin looking for compromises. They start lowering the expectations. They begin searching for language that allows both sides to claim some kind of victory. Trump, to many people's frustration, actually does the opposite. He increases the pressure like he did yesterday. Why? Because he understands a simple truth. The side that needs the deal the most is usually the side that loses. So think about that. If Iran desperately needs relief from things like sanctions, which they do, and they desperately need economic breathing room, which they do, and they desperately need military pressure reduced, which they do, then why should Trump rush this thing? Why would he give away his leverage? Why would he negotiate against himself and the country? He wouldn't. And of course, he doesn't. Instead, he keeps telling the world that a deal is available. It's close. Tomorrow, next week, anytime Iran wants one, we'll have a deal. All they have to do is meet the conditions. And folks, that's not stalling. That's leverage. The media often mistakes patience for indecision. It's not the same thing. Everybody wants the instant gratification in 2026, but that's not Trump. Trump appears perfectly comfortable allowing pressure to build while the other side decides whether continuing to resist is worth the cost. That takes discipline. It also takes confidence. Most politicians become terrified when negotiations drag on. They start worrying about the headlines. They worry about the polls. They worry about appearing unsuccessful. Trump's never seemed particularly interested in any of that, actually. He's interested in the outcome. That's why he walked away from bad deals in business. It's why he walks away from bad deals in his first term, and it's why he's willing to sit and wait it out now. Because ultimately the goal isn't an agreement. The goal is the right agreement. Those are very different things. What's happening in Iran isn't random. It's not emotional. It's not impulsive. What Trump is waging here is a pressure campaign designed to produce a very specific outcome. Maximum leverage, maximum pressure, zero concessions. That's Trump. That's how he's negotiated for decades. And whether his critics like it or not, It's exactly how he's negotiating with Iran today. You know, Iran has spent 50 years learning how to exploit weakness, delay decisions, outlast Western politicians. What they're discovering now, though, is that Donald Trump is not particularly interested in playing by those rules. He's making them play by his instead. And that's pretty damn refreshing, if you ask me, from a commander-in-chief in the White House. So we'll continue to watch that here. The debate over FISA continues on Capitol Hill, and it has led to President Trump changing direction on who his next, although I don't know how likely it is that he's going to change his direction on this either. The House has rejected a short-term extension of Section 702 of FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And Democrats say the only way they will come on board and support it is if President Trump reverses course on his selection for Director of National Intelligence, Bill Pulte. They don't like this guy. And as such, it's pretty interesting. A standoff over whether President Trump's decision to install Bill Pulte as acting director of national intelligence has jeopardized what lawmakers in both parties consider one of the government's most important intelligence tools. The vast majority of House Democrats opposing the extension through July 2nd, along with a group of conservatives upset about a lack of reforms. The vote, 198 to 218. If Congress doesn't act, Section 702 lapses today, Friday, the 12th of June. Democrats have refused to back this extension of Section 702 unless Trump reverses his decision to name Pulte as DNI. Trump said Wednesday on Truth Social he wants Pulte, who Axios points out lacks national security experience, to execute the immediate and needed downsizing of the Office of Director of National Intelligence. So he believes Pulte is a hatchet man who can go in and gut the national intelligence apparatus because it has been, of course, weaponized for a very long time. Pulte is a tough guy, and Trump likes him a lot, wants him to move in and start to gut, slash, and cut DNI. Never a bad thing. Again, President Trump has been pretty consistent. We are at 50-year lows in federal employment. If you didn't know that, again, it's worth repeating. We have not seen government employment at this low a level in 50 years. And that's courtesy of Trump's agenda. Anyway, before Trump picked Pulte, GOP lawmakers were close to assembling a bipartisan coalition on this extension of FISA. Negotiations have been difficult, lawmakers struggling for months to bridge disagreements over surveillance reforms. 702, this section of FISA, feeds more than half of the president's daily briefing and has been credited with helping thwart terror plots and other national security threats. But if Congress does not renew this, intelligence agencies and telecommunications companies will face immediate legal uncertainty over what collection activities may continue. The result could be chaotic and largely untested period for intelligence community. Look, everybody knows that FISA has been abused. There is debate about whether this particular Section 702 is the same thing or not. The conservatives that I have talked to on Capitol Hill that are in objection to 702, what they want is more oversight of FISA. It isn't really that they even object to passing FISA. They believe in many ways it has been reformed to their satisfaction. What they don't believe has been dealt with are punishments for people that abuse it and duplicative processes for people who engage in surveilling you and me. So said another way, if I want to surveil Aaron, the producer of this show, and I work inside the FBI, I then would have to go to another intelligence chief or agency and make the case. Because, again, you get a bad actor inside the FBI, and he or she has the leverage to just immediately launch some kind of surveillance of a fellow American citizen without any kind of duplication process. That is a totally disinterested observer. I want to surveil Aaron. That means I need to call my next door neighbor who doesn't know Aaron at all and say, okay, Chris, why do you want to surveil Aaron? And I lay out a list of reasons why, and then they sign off on it too. And if for some reason it comes back on me that I'm surveilling Aaron because I'm mad at him for something he did to me in college, well, not only am I going to pay a very, very stiff penalty for it, but so too would the individual who would have to vet my rationale for surveilling Aaron. Those are some of the reforms. I'm oversimplifying it. There are others, but that's one of the things that many House conservatives are saying they want to see. President Trump is saying, look, this thing has benefited us a lot. I know it's been abused. Nobody knows how it's been weaponized more than me. FISA was weaponized against me and my team more greatly than anybody else, and he's right to say so. He's kind of telling House conservatives now, trust me, we're not going to abuse it the same way. I don't think he will. And I think it's fair to say trust him. But the problem, of course, is President Trump will only be around for another 2.5 years. And then there's going to be a new administration. And we know how it was weaponized. And so the House Republicans are trying to make this pretty ironclad, with teeth and tough, so that if we're going to talk about the severity of surveilling American citizens, we got to be deadly serious that we know why we're doing it and that appropriate oversight is being done to make sure it isn't abused again. So it's a big deal. President Trump, meanwhile, said he will nominate a guy called Jay Clayton as Director of National Intelligence, hours after objections by House Democrats to the acting director, Bill Pulte. So what does this mean? Clayton is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and is the former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. He'll have to be confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence by the Senate. The Senate is moving quickly on the nomination. The Select Committee on Intelligence Thursday announced confirmation for Clayton, the hearing on June 17th, which is a pretty rapid pace. Trump's surprise announcement came after more than a week of controversy surrounding Pulte. So what does this tell us? This tells us, again, going back to leverage, the Democrats, unfortunately, because President Trump and his security team say, look, I want FISA. I need it now. House Republicans say, we need reforms. Trump says, we don't have the time to wait. This is too critically important. House Republicans said, we're not rushing this. House Democrats said, okay, you want your FISA extension? We'll give it to you, but you got to get rid of Pulte. This is frustrating, folks, because I know what you're thinking, and I know horse trading in politics is frustrating. President Trump likes Pulte. He liked the idea that he was going to go in and gut national intelligence. It looks like Trump has changed his mind on that, and it looks like he's changed his mind because he needs these FISA provisions enacted, extended for their intelligence needs. And it appears that some House Republicans are not going to give him that today. And so he's now, look, this is my basic reading of it. I could be wrong, but it looks like maybe now he's trying to get some Democrats to peel back and help advance the FISA extension by taking Pulte out of the running. That tells me that Bill Pulte was uniquely someone that the Democrats feared and didn't like, which kind of bums me out, because if the Democrats really, really, really oppose somebody taking a post, generally that means as a conservative, I want them at that post. At least that's what I find.